It is apparent that Lamborghini had been experiencing severe economical turmoil for years on end, starting in 1978 from their bankruptcy well until their Audi ownership in the late 1990s. One can wonder how the company could have possibly survived for so long. Probably because of the cash cow Countach. The thing is, however, by the late 1980s it was like a steam locomotive in a world of bullet trains. Alongside the Countach, a thing to cater to less wealthier enthusiasts was sold, the Lamborghini Jalpa. It was developed in the late 1970s as a midship accessible-ish Lamborghini with a V8 engine and a 5-speed manual. Those cars' competitors used cutting-edge technology, while Lamborghini could not brag about such. By the end of the 1980s, it was obvious that replacements were absolutely needed, and that is what Chrysler had thought of after acquiring Lamborghini in 1987. And so, they have pulled the plug on the ancient Jalpa and have prolonged the Countach's lifespan artificially with some modifications up until the year 1990. However, in fact, Lamborghini have been working on a Countach replacement even before Chrysler. Of course, the styling of the Countach was remarkably stunning. However, by the standards of the late 1980s, it was obsolete, and so the design of the new flagship model was given to the same person who penned the Countach, Marcello Gandini, and he came up with something that looks like this, quite stunning, a thing that looks like it would star in Miami Vice. The car was dubbed the P132. The whole project had a rather high bar of required top speed, 315 km per hour in 1985, beating the previous Countach record of 298 km per hour. However, for some reason that I cannot really think of, when Chrysler had got hold of the company, they were absolutely displeased with its design, and so the idea of this car being a production run was scrapped. Chrysler had also made their own proposal that looked something like this. The underpinnings and the design of this whole project were refined and eventually developed into the legendary Diablo, which had become the new flagship model. The entire program cost 6 billion Italian lire, which would have been 10 million euros nowadays. Quite cheap for a project of such caliber. Luckily for Gandini, his work didn't go fruitless and the design would be later developed into the infamous Gisetta Marauder, but that is a story for another video. Chrysler had obviously thought in the direction of a new entry-level model as well, to replace the aged Jalpa, and so, alongside the P132, using the same wedgy design language that Gandini incorporated, this was developed, the P147. Since this was the entry-level model in the lineup, it was given a smaller engine, a 4-liter V10, thus making it the first V10 Lamborghini ever made. It was also actually designed to be very consumer-friendly, featuring things like a greatly ergonomical interior, unlike the previous models. To be up to date, it also extensively used aluminum in its construction. After 3 or 4 prototypes were produced, this car was ready for a full-on production run. The first prototype was painted in orange and it was fully functional, being able to hit a top speed of 295 km on the Nardo Ring in Italy. The second prototype was painted red. However, it was never fit with an engine and it was just a rolling chassis. The third car ended up being crashed, but then restored, and it is this one, currently up for display in Lamborghini's museum. There are actually no records for the fourth one, although it might have existed. The documentation on all Lamborghinis is extremely shady. However, those were just the prototypes that had Gandini's bodywork. Chrysler, of course, had introduced their own design proposal, for it to look something like this. Quite a bit more unamusing. In my opinion, it looks like a slightly more premium Dodge Stealth. Bertone had also tried designing it, being a sort of a compromise between Gandini's and Chrysler options, although in my opinion, of course Gandini had made the most stunning and masterful work here. Unfortunately, Chrysler had ended this project. They have speculated that it would not be able to justify its development costs due to the 1990 Gulf oil crisis, and so the model was shelved. However, not for long. Eventually, Lamborghini was sold to a rather interesting company, Megatech, in 1994 for $40 million. A Bermuda-registered company already strikes as quite shady, however, the origin of this one was Indonesian. Furthermore, the key person of it was Tommy Suharto, the Nepo child of the Indonesian president by the same surname. He really liked to dabble in corruption, even masterminding the assassination of the judge that convicted him. Anyways, As time went on a year later, with the only current Lamborghini model being the Diablo, they had understood that an additional entry-level model would definitely not hurt. Something to rival the Heuliez F355, and they just had the right basis for it, the previous P140, and so they have lifted the 4-liter V10 from it and ordered Ital design to sketch up the body for the new car. And they came up with this. The first, most noticeable thing is that they have completely stepped away from the wedgie design language, incorporating more of a smooth look, which was very contemporary for the time. But the design was not the only contemporary thing. The body was now made entirely from carbon fiber. To keep the driving engagement, it was only available with a 6-speed manual gearbox. However, its competitor already could offer an F1 AMT. The interior was also made to be extremely ergonomical and driver-friendly. To increase market reach, an interesting target top setup that looks like a balding man's head was fitted. You can now already drive out that this car was literally the 1990s Lamborghini Gallardo. It was absolutely ready for production, and now it is the time to see how it actually stands off against its rival, the Ferrari F355. Here we are behind the wheel of the Lamborghini Cala, and we're going to see how it competes against the F355 live. Alright, there it goes. Right off the bat, you may notice that the F355 feels more stable in corners. That is because it is mid-engines, the Cala is rear mid-engines. So it gets a bit more twitchy. It has more straight line power in the larger engine. Second of all, there is some drama with the brakes, because the Cala was made as a purist car, so it doesn't have any ABS. The F355 is more of a mass market car, so it doesn't have ABS. So I have to
But it has really bad brakes.
Yeah. So I have to really balance out brakes, not to lock up the wheels. This thing suffers from such snap-overs, so it's insane. Second of all, this car is really terrifying to drive.
Oh god. Oh god. Oh.
Because when you get behind the wheel of an entry-level Lamborghini, you expect it to be very forgiving, smooth, and sensible. This one tries to assassinate you every second of you being behind the wheel. Right, some tight corner attacking there. A really tight corner. Gorge here. God, that is dangerous.
Indeed.
Yeah. There will be a downhill at this point where you can reach over 250 kilometers per hour. Oh my god, I am taking off.
Same thing. I'm going 250 and then we brake. Oh!
And so, the Cala is more visceral and raw to drive, and it is also faster in a straight line. However, expectedly, Megatech had started suffering financial issues, and alongside that time, in 1998, the company was finally sold to Audi for $110 million. Audi, however, had decided to drop it in the favor of a clean sheet design. The same thing has happened with the Lamborghini Diablo's successor. As the Diablo was obviously aging, Lamborghini, still under Chrysler at the time, had started work on what would become the new flagship. The first thing that they have done, however, was not a full-on brand new car, but an ultra-advanced evolution of the existing model, the SuperDiablo. The car was restyled in favor of a more aerodynamic and futuristic organic shape, extensively using carbon fiber constructions. Essentially the same thing that was the Countach Evoluzione. It is very possible that the works of the man responsible for the Countach Evo eventually led to this project. The man in question was Horatio Pagani. The documentation is very lackluster, however, it is safe to assume that when Horatio has broken off from Lamborghini, he definitely used some design elements from the SuperDiablo. You can definitely trace back the SuperDiablo's design in what would eventually become the Zonda. The project was quite short-lived, however, and in essence it was just a testbed for prototyping. In order to experiment with what should be the next flagship successor, it is at this point that Lamborghini continues on making one-offs based on Diablos, and all of them were rather special. However, this one is just mind-blowing. It was created with the help of the Zagato design house, and it was dubbed the Raptor. This is a literal fighter jet, which would have definitely turned heads in the mid-90s. It had the all-wheel drive VT system from the Diablo, however no ABS, and essentially underneath it was a Diablo VT. One of the most interesting things in this design is the cockpit canopy door, although I really don't think that would work out on a production car really well. Because of overall uncertainty for anything at the time, Lamborghini had given up on its development. However, there actually was one person who still tried to make it work, a Swiss skeleton racer with lots of money. Quite weird, but anyways, it ended up nowhere and it was sold off in the year 2000 to a private car collector. Now, the year is 1998. Sheer months are left before Audi acquires Lamborghini, and yet the endless stream of experimentation had not yet ended. To produce their next car, which was destined to be a what-off, Lamborghini commissioned the French coach builder Heuliez, whose most notable works include roofs for the Peugeot 206cc. However, they did not fail to deliver. Yet again, the design was inspired by a fighter jet, this time a Dassault Rafale, and this, in a good way, is the craziest proposal yet. It is the Lamborghini Pregunta, which translates to Lamborghini question from Spanish. The design was indeed questionable in some spots. If you had showed me this picture with no prior knowledge or context, I would have assumed that this is a TVR. Furthermore, the cockpit of this Diablo VT based build was laced with various futuristic technology buzzwords. For example, a modern LCD display, a satellite navigation unit, and whatever fiber optic ambient lighting is. Over $800,000 went into the development of this car. With enough experimentation done, it was at this time that Lamborghini had launched the program that would be the final Ecto Diablo's successor, titled the P147. Under that moniker, two prototypes were made, one designed by Gandini and one by Zagato. I would expect that Gandini had drawn up yet another masterpiece. However, it seems like at this time Marcello was experimenting with designing under Absinthe, since this is what he came up with. I literally have no idea how Lamborghini expected this to work out as their gateway into the new millennia. It looks like a Diablo was bitten by a bee. It doesn't look modernized anywhere. Instead, it just looks like an old, really swollen design. The Canto was the proposal designed by Zagato. Oh sorry, wrong photo. It looks absolutely stunning. It was initially developed in 1997 and then it was facelifted in 1999. Now, it featured the overall organic and sleek qualities that the new Lamborghini design tried to incorporate. And yes, those headlights were lifted straight from a Fiat Coupe. It had massive rear air intakes, however, it still somehow suffered cooling issues. The interior was also made to be very contemporary, although it is kind of reminiscent of a washing machine control panel in some places. Also, take a look at that HVAC control system. Comes straight from the same source as the Zonda's, the Rover 45. As per the drivetrain, it had a massively upgraded 640 brake horsepower V12, mated to a 6-speed manual. In the future, we could probably see an automated manual transmission as well. Now, since it was seen everywhere at tests and it was released and shown under Audi, it seems like they have taken it really seriously. However, eventually, Ferdinand Piech have found the styling inappropriate for that of a Lamborghini, and the project was eventually shelved. In the end, the Diablo was facelifted with a pop-up light removal, and then in 2001, the Murcielago was shown, marking the end of an era for Lamborghini. As you have seen, Lamborghini had definitely had an enormous amount of ambition and ideas that would objectively work out on the market. However, what they did not have was certainty for their financial future, and so the Audi ownership had provided exactly that. Maybe at some loss of their authenticity, however, it is hard to deny some spectacular products were produced by Lamborghini under Audi. If Audi hadn't bought Lamborghini, it would have likely still stayed afloat. However, chances are it would be a small boutique car manufacturer, just like Spiker or TVR. Or in the best case scenario, Pagani. On one hand, we would have a fantastic source of purist, driver-focused head-turning cars. On the other hand, Ferrari would have the monopoly on the mass-market supercars field. In my opinion, it seems like the Audi acquisition was for the better. If you do have something to add about this topic, please make sure to comment. The documentation on all of this is not exactly clear, so it is a hard job to precisely research all this. See you next time, probably in a few weeks.